Hi, everyone. So this teaching demo will be about a third of the way through an advanced undergraduate fiction class that focuses on character development specifically. The module will be organized by the various kind of aspects that character typically should possess in a fiction work. And the way I break that down is one, character must have desire. Two, character experiences obstacle. Three, character is representative of values of some kind. Four, the character has flaws, and obviously that can coincide with obstacles as well. But we establish them explicitly in the beginning of the course to ensure that we're at least covering the bases. And then the fifth would be that characters show the processing of their emotions, or they show their emotional response to their circumstances. So in this 5-part module, I would begin with establishing desire for the character. And that's what this teaching demo is going to cover, one of those class meetings. Prior to the class meeting, students will have read Rachel Kong's My Dear You, which is a wonderful, fabulous fiction work, and Daniel Evans's Anything Could Disappear. They would be asked prior to the class meeting to identify the protagonist's desires and how the story conveys those desires. So they would actually look under the hood and figure out where and how the writer is establishing the desire for their protagonist. And in Kong's story, it's a first-person POV, so you would think it would be with interiority or with responses to the environment, but we have a largely unreliable interiority in that story, and so it makes it quite difficult. We have an ambivalent character who really doesn't know what she wants, or at least in this kind of exterior way, right? And Evans's protagonist is evoked mostly through interactions with other characters. So we have two very different stories in the way that they establish desire. But with both of them, it can be quite challenging to be definitive with those determinations. So it makes for good debate. When students actually come to class, they will have already made these determinations in preparation. But then in class, they would present their ideas and we would initiate the debate. Obviously, a good story doesn't establish the desires so explicitly, where it's paint by numbers, and both of these writers successfully make it complicated. And that's good for our students because they're more advanced in fiction, so they can be kind of playing around with the complexity that both of the protagonists of these stories develops. After they do this, and they kind of marvel at the various responses that they gave, and they're kind of negotiating the nuances of their answers, we then go into their own stories. So just prior to this class, they will have submitted their very first draft of a work in progress. And so it's sitting with them. The anxiety is riddled in them all because they know that soon they're going to be reviewing those works. But we don't review them just yet. They have submitted the work in progress with an intention statement. But we actually don't review the stories right away. Instead, they have a couple weeks of development that they do prior to turning in another draft, which then gets reviewed. And that is, I set that up so that they can build intention with their work. And it's a little more low stakes. So when they come to this class, after they debate these other two published stories' establishment of protagonist desire, I then have them engage in a writing prompt for 10 minutes. I ask them to write from the perspective of their protagonist, no matter what POV they decided to use for their story. And it is meant to be more of like a monologue or a rant, even. And I asked them to just write nonstop for 10 minutes to answer the question, what does the protagonist want? And why are they having trouble getting it? And so I have them indulge in the interior voice of those characters, kind of like we would write a diary entry, just to see if they can unpack something from the character that they have in their mind, and to remove them from the explicit narrative that they've placed them in, so that they can maybe discover something else about what they want and why they feel like they can't get it. After they do this prompt, I pair the students together. And for a couple minutes, each of them writes out 5 interview questions, as if they are going to interview the protagonist of the student writer's stories. And, well, because they are. And after they write out these 5 interview questions, the partners engage in those interviews, much like they would interview someone for a school newspaper. Again, this is a way to just kind of live the character into the body, because sometimes when students do that, they discover a lot more than when they're within the constrained experience of writing the narrative, right? So we're trying to play a little bit with the inter and the extra diegetic, but I'm not introducing those concepts to them just yet. And then finally, after they have done these interviews, after they have performed this monologue / rant, I charge them with an exercise at home. And that will be that they need to construct a brand new scene in their stories that's primary purpose is to reveal the desire of the protagonist within the realm of the narrative. So construct a scene that does that, either through dialogue or interaction, or if more appropriate, through emotional response or the processing of experience within the narrative, something along those lines, where they're showing the desire more than just understanding the desire.